looking back, I was just limiting our own potential and growth and hurting my own business and my own employees by getting in the way. So I would say for anyone out there who's a new leader like I was and maybe struggles with similar things, is just learning from me and getting help sooner and learning how you can give up responsibility faster and realizing that not everything has to be perfect.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? I'm excited to share with you this episode today because it really does come from my heart. As a leader, I know what it's like to want to grow your company fast and to want to have the right people that you can depend on for that. Well, one of the things I've learned through my research is that you want to have people that will think for themselves, willing to fail and willing to learn from those mistakes and pick themselves back up and keep going. Their courage is not diminished as they continue to evolve in their roles. And they're willing to be real leaders, not just manage a process with a little tweak here and a little tweak there. They really are willing to do stuff that's never been done before. I have a special guest today that talks about the importance of hiring people that have an entrepreneur spirit. He really is honest with us a little bit because he says he held himself back and what he was doing in the beginning was great, but he was a jack of all trades and he really should have hired earlier. And as he started to hire and build his company, it's really started to explode. We talk about some of the secrets behind that. Our guest today is Kyle Goguen. Kyle is the CEO, founder of Pawstruck. Pawstruck is just astronomical growth on the Inc. 500 list. I almost said 5,000, but they're number 87. They grew at 3,981%. They're in the millions in revenue. So what could you learn from Kyle? Well, let me tell you, Kyle is a first-time entrepreneur. He's very young. He's only been out of school, maybe 4 or 5 years, but he has exploded in the way he thinks about building a company and a culture that centers around serving the clients. Now, we talk about that entrepreneur spirit today on the episode. My favorite thing he talks about is transparency. That's at the very end. So you have to get all the way to the end of the importance of transparency inside your company. So thanks for tuning in here to Grow Think Tank. Really excited about sharing this with you. And before you run, I have done so many interviews over the last few weeks. I have such an exciting time to share with you that those interviews have been organized into the 12 core principles of fast growth companies. So all you have to do to get that is go to genehammett.com/worksheet. So you can get the 12 principles, and I've been able to go in there and find which episodes will align to each individual episode. When you subscribe to Grow Think Tank, you will find exactly what you need so that you can move forward. And many of them haven't been published yet, depending on when you're hearing this, but you can tune in to the date that means the most to you. So here's the interview with Kyle. Hi, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you here on the podcast. We have already introduced you, or I have. So I'd love for them to hear a little bit about your role there at Pawstruck.
Sure. So I am the owner and founder of Pawstruck. I started Pawstruck in 2014, right after college. We manufacture and package and private label various different dog treats and dog chews. We sell under our own brand across a bunch of different online sales channels, direct to consumer. So through our website, we sell through Amazon, eBay, Groupon, Walmart, and we're launching on Chewy later this year. And it's been a fun ride since 2014 and learned a ton. And this has been my first, I guess, real business that I've run personally.
Well, I'm looking at you on video. Our audience may not see the video. You're young. You graduated from college just a few years ago.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2013 with my undergrad and then 2014 with my master's. And I started the business right as I was pursuing my master's, kind of at the same time. I guess the thought process being the master's would be a backup plan if the business fell through. Looking back, wasn't really necessary, but I guess I don't really regret it. It was still a good experience.
I have a lot of entrepreneurs that have one day thought they would get the MBA, the formal training, but they got busy with it. And I've talked to a lot of who actually got the MBA and said, I learned so much more just by doing than learning about doing. So I'm sure you're putting it to good use now as your company's just astronomical growth over the last 3 years has really put you into the Inc. 500 or number 87, right?
Yep, that's right.
Well, I wanted to talk to you today about some of the core drivers of growth that really make what your company grow so fast. So, when I ask you that question, what do you think that top issue is that drives the growth of the company?
So for us, even though our team is really lean and has been kind of since the get-go, uh, it's been our team that's allowed us to grow. Just the people we've been able to hire as we've gone along has really kind of taken us to the next level. For the first couple of years, to be honest, it's primarily just me, and I was definitely the limiting factor in the business. We're still doing well, but because I was doing everything, there wasn't really a lot of room for serious growth. So it was after those first couple of years of learning how to hire and how to delegate where we're able to really take it to the next level.
Now, we were talking earlier when we got to know each other a few days ago. I think you look at this differently than you look at this differently than what most business owners look at employees. But you're very similar to what the Inc. 5000 level leaders look at it. It's that entrepreneur spirit inside of the company. Why is that important to you?
Yeah, so kind of like you're kind of implying there, when I hire, pretty much for almost all roles, I look for someone with that entrepreneurial spirit kind of inside them. And the reason I do that is because our team is so lean. I've found that I need leaders at every role. I need people who are willing to do anything, wear many hats, be really well-rounded. I'm not really looking for someone who is just content in a single role, just because honestly we couldn't hire employees like that. Our team was so small that we needed people to do all different types of things, and I realized as we started doing that was really like my style and what I preferred. I like to surround myself with kind of similar thinking people that are always pushing for growth and pushing to improve and make things better. And that probably comes down to, like we talked about, my college education as an industrial engineer. Like, it's all a lot of systems and it's efficiency and improvement, and it's just kind of my personality. So I think surrounding myself with those type of people fits me as a leader, and I think is honestly a great thing for most businesses.
Kyle, I think you might be the only other industrial engineer that I've had on the show other than myself. So, that systems thinking is part of that industrial engineering course load. Everything was about measuring systems, designing systems. How has that benefited you in growing the company?
Right. So a lot of my education dealt with like very high level I guess, processes and systems and all sort of stuff like that. It'd be like, oh, okay, if you have 10 different warehouses across the country, and there's 10 million square feet and all these machines and all this sort of stuff. And in reality, our operation is significantly more simple. It's like one warehouse. It's not super complicated. So I would say like the exact curriculum, I haven't really put it into use, but I think it's just that kind of problem solving thought process that's really helped me. It kind of came naturally to me, and that's kind of why I pursued that sort of degree in the first place. But just all of that sort of thinking where, it's all about efficiency, and there's no problem too big that, we can always figure out a way around it kind of thought process.
Well, I can say the same thing for me. I'm not formally using that in industrial engineering, but problem solving has been a big part of what I got from my Georgia Tech education. I want to go back to this entrepreneur spirit because, it's one thing that to say that you hire for people that think like entrepreneurs, but what are the values that you have identified that really are important to you as a business owner and a leader?
Sure. So I didn't have this really formalized for many years. I kind of was just not realizing that I was hiring these sort of values. And then we actually went through the process of writing down company values and kind of building all out that kind of culture for our company. And so I realized those company values, I mean, it's curiosity. Like, I think entrepreneurs just naturally are very curious people. So we're looking for people like that always want to learn, get on to the next thing, and kind of be leaders within whatever space we're doing. or whatever we're pursuing, I guess. Initiative. So same thing, like entrepreneurs. I mean, that's basically a definition of being an entrepreneur. You got to take the initiative to start a business, or, run a department, or take on big projects, whatever that is, as an employee. And then collaboration is another one of our values that we look for in people. You have to be able to work well in a team, because there is, I guess, technically like those solopreneurs, and that's definitely what I was initially. But for most successful, larger, fast-growing businesses, you have to be able to lead a team or work within a team. And then the last thing is like satisfaction, and that covers both customer satisfaction. Obviously, for us as an e-commerce company, that's like one of the main priorities for us, but really satisfaction personally, like with your own work, like always striving for satisfaction and, perfection when it's possible, but, just doing the best you can, I guess, is kind of what we're looking for.
I want to pause right here because, Kyle talked about values, and he really waited a little bit longer than most companies do in the Inc. 5000, because he wanted to understand what was the core values that were driving the company forward. Now, if you're growing a fast company, you know the importance of understanding what the values are so that you can hire people that have similar values, which means you want people with diversity of thought, but at the core foundation, how they see the world, they have some alignment there around those values. So if you don't know what those values are, you must do it. And then the second part behind that is it's not just knowing the values, you must operationalize them, which means a process of ingraining them into the way you work, the way you operate, the way you lead, the way you serve, the way you sell, the way you market. Everything is operationalized, and most people miss that step. I work with companies all the time to make sure that their values really are part of their living, breathing structure and success of growth. If there's anything I can do, just make sure you reach out. Now back to the interview with Kyle.
Entrepreneurs don't really do well when they have to have everything perfect, would you say?
I don't know. I'm a perfectionist, and that's definitely been an issue, especially early on. Is like I can't get out of my own way trying to make things perfect, and it was really tough for me to give up control. But it took a lot of work, kind of personal growth on my end, to hire and delegate and give up control, and it's been the best thing. And like we talked about, growth wise, like it's not a secret sauce, but that's what I've had to do to grow.
When you think about controlling as a owner or business leader, it really does limit your growth. And you've mentioned a couple of different times. Is there anything specific that stands out around when you were controlling that was limiting your growth of the company?
Nothing specific that comes to mind. Really, it was just general stuff. It was things that, I guess, one of my biggest strengths and weaknesses is that I'm very well-rounded. Like, I can handle some of the technical stuff, like on our website, some of the HTML or some of the development stuff, and photo editing and video editing and all of these things. I'm not an expert, but I can get it done, which is terrific when I'm just starting out, because it's a very cost-effective way to get things done. But I'm not especially fast. I don't really love it, and I'm not that great at it. So I just got in the habit of continuing to do these sort of things that I should have hired for or outsourced very quickly. So it just didn't allow me to spend time on the big picture things that would actually grow the business.
Well, I want to go back to the hiring, because you mentioned about you learning how to do that over time. So what have you learned about how to hire someone with an entrepreneur spirit?
Yeah. So it was not something that I was intentionally looking for in the beginning. I just started to recognize that pattern, that those were the people that I naturally were attracted to as employees. But looking back, I've started to pay closer attention to it during the interview process, and even like looking through resumes and applications and stuff like that. So the obvious one is anyone who's kind of run their own small business or held, serious leadership positions. That's one that checks the box right away, that it might be interesting to speak with them. In this day and age with, Shopify and some of these other e-commerce platforms, so easy to just throw something up and start selling a product. So anyone who's taken that initiative, it honestly doesn't even really matter how successful that business was. Like, I'm not looking to hire people who are running a successful business, because otherwise, why would they be looking for a job? But someone who just took that initiative and did it, because that's a big step, I think. There's a lot of people who talk about it, but there's someone who actually signed up and actually took the time to put take the risk and sell something and buy something. And I think that says a lot about someone based on what I'm looking for. And then during interviews, I actually do make a point of bringing up the fact that that type of person is someone I'm looking for, someone with that ambition, that kind of entrepreneurial ambition. And then if it's not during business hours, that I'd be happy to help them grow or assist or give advice on their side projects. I mean, it's something that I'm passionate about, is helping other business owners. Like, I love talking about business during, work hours, and, on my own time with other peers in e-commerce and other businesses. So I let kind of the employees know that if they want to do something else, that's totally cool, as long as it's not during work hours, and I'd be happy to help them, in fact. And you can kind of gauge like the interest level from the get-go. Some people are really excited by that prospect, and you can kind of tell like, oh, they were serious about this other business, and it wasn't just something they were sticking on their resume. And I guess just to give you an idea of some of our past employees, like, we've definitely had a couple that have their own e-commerce businesses. It's funny, for whatever reason, a lot of them were in some sort of apparel. They were kind of hand making things and selling on their website, or like an Etsy business. And then we also have someone in-house who's a writer, who's published poetry and is just finished up a novel that she's working on editing now. So that's kind of outside my wheelhouse from a business standpoint, but I'm excited to help her with the marketing of the book and all of that stuff, even though I really don't know anything about it, but I just want to get involved. It's exciting for me.
Well, let me know if you have any questions, because I marketed my book over the last couple of years. It's a lot of fun, and you have to learn a lot of new things.
Yes, we'll definitely be reaching out once she's done editing it, which I'm sure is a huge process.
A lot of leaders might be tuning in here going, I understand this entrepreneur spirit, but I don't want them to have a side project. I don't want them to have, have a distraction, or maybe something that they're worried that they're going to be so successful that they're going to leave the company. So
right.
What do you say to those leaders that may be thinking that right now?
So I hear a lot of people saying that, and I understand it. And there definitely is a risk. And personally, I've never been burned by it. So maybe I'm just naive, but I think there's more pros than there are cons. Having someone with that mindset and that ability, and someone who's on the side working to learn more about business and run their own business, like, they're going to take all those skills that they're learning in their own business and bring it to your workplace. Of course, you need someone who's not burning themselves out, but that's a separate issue. Like, if they're not effective at work, well, that's something that you need to coach them on, or, have conversations about. I don't really worry about it. Obviously, I let them know very clearly that they can't create a business that's competing with Pawstruck for obvious reasons, but you do want to make that clear. But if they're selling something else, I mean, that's the beauty of e-commerce to some extent. Like, they can take everything they learn here and go sell almost anything else. It doesn't really matter. And they can take a lot of the same principles, and vice versa. Anything they learn selling stuff online, they can bring to Pawstruck. So I don't see it as a huge risk. I kind of compare it to a lot of people who are thinking they're going to start their own business and have this brilliant idea, but they don't want to share it with anyone, where they're so nervous that someone's going to take the idea and steal it. I kind of think of it the same way. Like, I'm of the opinion that it's all about execution. So share that idea with everyone in the world and get as much input as possible. And kind of the same with this. Like, I'm not going to keep our email marketing strategy secret from these sort of employees. I want them to know it. I want them to implement it if they are doing a side project, so they can bring something to the table that maybe they wouldn't have learned in the office.
Has there been any mistakes that you've made in this journey? I mean, you're a new leader, new founder. This is your first real business. Is there anything you could share with us that you've learned from?
Yeah. So I've definitely, mentioned it a few times in this interview already. So that shows you that it was a huge issue that I've faced in the past. But the biggest thing was me being slow to hire and slow to delegate things. It all comes down to that, me being a perfectionist and holding all the responsibilities for the first couple of years, if not longer. Especially in the beginning, doing everything from customer service to packaging and shipping orders and all the marketing and everything else, which isn't to say that those roles are not important, because they definitely are. It's just, looking back, I was just limiting our own potential and growth and hurting my own business and my own employees by getting in the way. So I would say for anyone out there who's a new leader like I was and maybe struggles with similar things, is just learning for me and getting help sooner, and learning how you can give up responsibility faster, and realizing that not everything has to be perfect, that most people aren't even really paying attention. And if you do make mistakes as a small business, like almost all mistakes you can come back from, and in reality, like, it's just going to be a learning lesson, and no one else except for you is going to even realize it or remember it.
A big mistake that Kyle mentioned is slow to hire and slow to delegate. And he also mentioned, some of the things that were going on with micromanagement. And he wanted to make sure that he intentionally got away from that. That's the reason he's embraced this entrepreneur spirit inside the workforce. And I really want you to think about, what are some of the mistakes that you've made in this journey? What are some of the mistakes that have held you back? One thing that you can do to help you get perspective on that is talk to someone to understand the blind spots. Talk to someone who really understands what leadership of a fast growth company is and does. If you want to reach out to me, that would be great. But you really want to go to someone else that can help you see those things sooner, shine a light on them, and make sure that you continue to grow as a leader, and you must grow faster than the company itself. Well, back to Kyle.
This whole concept of failure, it's really different when you have people that have that entrepreneur spirit, because they seem to be more resilient through failure, whereas people that just want to do the work and try to make it just a little bit better each time. What do you think about failure inside your company, and how do you lead people to have a better grasp of that?
So I try to give my employees the same, I guess, slack that I give myself, because I've definitely made a lot of mistakes and a lot of things that you could consider failures. But in reality, it's stuff that we had to learn from. It's a lot of mistakes where we tried, maybe it was different product lines or different sales channels, and we sunk a lot of time and effort into it. And it wasn't necessarily bad ideas. It's just stuff that didn't work out, whether it was in our control or out of our control. And I'm the first one to accept responsibility in front of my employees. And I think that's really key too, is kind of a culture of, hey, just, mistakes will happen, take responsibility from them and learn how to move forward. It's not about placing blame. It's not something that we're going to point fingers and fire people because of. It's, if you made the decision, if the thought process was right and why you made that decision, like, it's not something that I'm going to hold against my employees, same as I cut myself a little bit of slack.
Well, I really appreciate you being here to share, some of the ways you think about it and approach leadership and your culture that has really activated such impressive growth for your company, Pawstruck. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you feel like plays an important part of the growth of your company that you want to kind of get out there right now?
Sure. So I guess one thing that I can touch on, in addition to trying to hire people with this skill set, there's one thing I purposely do to try to kind of continue that growth as kind of a employee with an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's just involving almost all the employees from the get-go in higher level meetings. So I'm pretty trustworthy, pretty transparent with a lot of our financials and a lot of our business strategies. And from the beginning, in our weekly meetings, will involve a lot of employees that in most businesses are traditionally would not be involved in those sort of meetings. And in the beginning, it's not like they contribute a whole lot, but it expedites that process of getting them to the next level. Just having exposure to everyone and seeing that sort of collaboration does wonders. And then much sooner than normal, they're starting to contribute ideas and really helping out and taking ownership of their specific roles as well. So I would say in most businesses, my advice would be to, give your employees the opportunity to learn and grow as fast as possible, and don't limit them, even if they are in maybe like a more entry level position. Give them the opportunity to see what they can do and step up to the plate.
Well, that transparency you talked about is one of the key principles of fast growth companies that they talk about. And I actually say it's radical transparency, because most businesses aren't willing to include them in financials and business strategies, and so that they have a better context of everything. So it's no surprise to me that you've done that and been successful at that, because that's a really core thing with other Inc. 500 leaders like yourself. So Kyle, thank you for being here on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your insight. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Wow, what a fantastic time there. I really feel like we're kindred spirits, not just because we have industrial engineering degrees together, but because of the way we think about leadership and the way we think about growth of the company and growth of the people that are inside there. He really does take some chances. Hopefully you're learning from these episodes. Thank you for being a part of the Global Think Tank. I really appreciate you tuning in today. If there's anyone specifically you know that wants to grow faster, make sure you refer them to our podcast. We'd love to hear from you.